Thank you very much for joining us today. My name is Edgar Villa, and I'm a licensed clinical social worker and a certified addiction treatment counselor at Crossroads Recovery Center. I am the executive director, and today I have a great show for you today. We're talking about how to manage your emotions effectively in recovery. What is emotional intelligence? It's really easy for a lot of individuals in recovery and family members to get angry during this process. And what is it you can do to prevent getting so angry that you might tell yourself, you know what? There's no point in this. I'm just go back and using. And how's a family member? How do you manage your emotions when it comes towards someone that's in recovery? So today we're going to learn a lot of important topics when it comes to anger management. What to do, what to look for, how to become aware of when you're getting angry. Even the first stages of anger is really important to prevent from increasing the anger to a point that is difficult to manage. Today we're going to be also understanding what is the difference between rage, what is between hostility and aggression and anger. What is anger? It's one of the important questions to ask ourselves and become more aware of when we become angry. Have you ever had a family member that say, or ask you, are you angry? You say, no. But deep down inside, you know you were angry. It's really important to understand that anger is a natural emotion, and it ranges from rage to simple irritation or frustration. So just understand that today we're going to talk about what is anger, how does it look like, how to manage it, because sometimes it could sabotage your recovery, it could sabotage your relationship, it could sabotage your life, and anger could actually be detrimental to your own health. So it's really important to understand not only how to manage anger, but also how to transform this anger, this energy to something helpful. Did you know that anger could also be a helpful component to your recovery? It could energize you. There's what we call constructive anger or healthy anger. It's very unlikely to never get angry, but it's highly likely to get angry in a way that it helps your recovery instead of damaging your recovery. So today we're going to talk about that important topic is anger management. Some of you have taken the course, some of you have to manage your anger. No difference between what is healthy, regular anger, to where is the anger where it becomes so unhealthy that it could damage your relationship. So you'll learn that as we go along. And if you look at the first thing I want to recognize is doctor named Daniel Goleman, he mentions emotional intelligence, and his definition is something, if you look with the screen, it actually is the capacity to recognize your own feelings and those of others for motivating ourselves or managing emotions well in ourselves and our relationships. Think about this. The capacity for recognizing your own feelings is really important. So understand what is your feeling at this particular moment. Understand what is a mood versus what is a feeling. A mood is something you sustain, you keep for long periods of time. You could be angry and all of a sudden it goes away. But when you have a kind of like an angry mood, that means you're angry for 4 hours, maybe 30, 40, 50 minutes. That's a mood that you have. And one thing you understand is that could really damage your recovery. So the first part that Dr. Daniel Goleman talks about is recognizing your feelings. So how do you know when you're angry? What triggers your anger? It's really important to understand that when I get angry, there's something that's causing my anger inside of me. It's important to understand that recognizing that anger, it gives you like a warning sign that something's going on with you. But sometimes we look at anger as a negative thing in recovery. No, it's not. It's actually a very healthy thing that we learn to need to feel instead of act. Instead of running away from it, embrace it. This is part of your recovery. Anger is telling you that something's going on in your life that it might not be helpful, or maybe an expectation. Sometimes anger could be mass depression. Sometimes anger could be caused because of trauma we haven't resolved, or it could be because we're going through the wall. We're going through biological brain chemistry changes that's caused us to be irritable. I had a client that texted me on Friday and said, Edgar, I'm really angry. I'm angry at work. I'm angry at the staff. I am angry just at everyone, at people driving. And he asked me, what do I do? I sent him a few texts back, and he met with the Crossroads Recovery counselor, and he was able to text me back and say, okay, Edgar, I understand my anger now, where it's coming from. And sometimes it's because you're making changes in your lifestyle. You maybe decrease drinking caffeine, maybe decrease sugar intake, whatever it might be. There's a lot of reasons will cause your anger. And so what I'm saying is that there's many causes to anger. Is understand what is the cause of your anger to put a plan together. And the first step is recognize what you're feeling. So how do you know when you're angry? Your body has signs. Your body goes in a state of physical terms. So I'm asking individuals is a certain question is, what does you start recognizing when you start getting angry? Because angry goes into stage. Now recognize the stages as we go along. The first stage we recognize is that your body starts actually developing chemicals you start feeling tense, maybe heart palpitation, maybe a little bit trembling, feeling hot, flustered. These are maybe your breathing has changed. Think about the last time you're very angry at someone. How did your body feel? Was it nice and calm and relaxed, or was it tense? Did you have this face? Were your hands clenched? Was your jaw doing this? What is that for you? That's the second step, is the behavior aspects that comes along with anger. Now, what happens is if we ignore the physiological changes, which is the body changes your body, it moves to the next stage. And something happens in seconds. And as you start clenching your jaw, face, moving forward, like you're ready to attack, that's whatever it might be. And then this is what people start saying or start telling you. You seem like you're angry. No, I'm not angry. But you have to recognize, yes, if someone's telling you look angry, it's because you might be giving off those behavior cues, or we call these behavior observational aspects of anger. Another thing is, if you ignore those, then they go strictly to the emotional aspect. Sometimes anger, what we call it, a secondary emotion. That means just anger is up here, and anger is a secondary emotion that covers up primary emotions. And primary emotions are feeling maybe shame, guilt, helpless, hopeless, these deeper emotions that make us feel weak. But when we get angry, it makes us feel strong and powerful. So that's one thing to look at, is what is my anger covering up? Those inner emotions. And if you ignore those, then it goes to your self-talk. And self-talk is what you tell yourself in your mind that goes through different scenarios, images of attacking the person back, telling the person off, maybe telling yourself, he should have not said that, I should have acted this way, how dare he, how dare she. Whatever those thoughts are will intensify the anger. So if you recognize, it goes from physiological, body changes. If you ignore those, it goes to behavior. If you ignore those, then the emotional aspects of the anger are ignored, and then it goes to the mental state. And the mental state is really hard to stop, because that's when you're telling yourself things, images of wanting to attack the other person or retaliate. And so really understand that this is a process you go to physically. It's easier to stop yourself when you're going through the body changes. Do your deep breathing, do different exercises for yourself. And that's how you recognize your feelings. That's how you recognize how you're feeling anger. Another part is understanding what are your triggers. What's causing you to get angry like this? Is it waiting in lines? Is someone telling you you're a liar? Is it maybe something that you feel guilty about and you're angry at yourself for not acting a certain way? Have you gone away from your value system? There's a lot of causes to anger. Have you changed your food intake? Whatever it might be, there's a lot of causes to this anger that sometimes we feel, and recovery could be a significant amount of reasons. But it's important to understand that there's something to do about this anger, and anger doesn't have to take you over. And I've realized that sometimes individuals in recovery don't want to acknowledge this anger for whatever reason. They say, I'm okay, I'm fine. Or they say anger and don't really do anything actively, instead of do something passively to manage your anger. And as we're going along is really learning to define what anger. And as mentioned before, anger is just an emotion that you experience. And that's all it is, ranging from rage to frustration. And the next thing you have to do is you have to be recognizing, in a scale of 1 to 10, to put in simple terms, 10 means you're angry. That means you lose control, you throw things, you say things that you don't mean. You might raise your voice really loudly. That's your 10. A lot of people think, well, Edgar, that's my 8 or 9. And that's because sometimes we are not gauging our anger as it's supposed to be. And remember, 5 is could be your regular anger. That's your constructive anger. When it goes to 5 on a scale of 10 or above, that's what we call destructive anger. That's when you're going to say things, do things that are very unhealthy for yourself or for someone else. That 5 or below anger, the frustration, irritation, you could actually help yourself and do something. Use that anger as energy to help you achieve certain goals. Another thing to look at is a healthy anger. It's important to recognize, because you could use that for improving your relationships, getting goals accomplished, whatever that might be. So think about this case. If you don't know how does your anger kind of display itself physically, if you don't know what's causing your anger, if you don't know how to gauge your anger from 1 to 10, how are you going to manage your anger? How are you going to control your anger? Then you're going to be a slave to this anger. And I'm not saying that some angers can be managed easier than others. What I'm saying is it's within your control to be able to manage your anger. And some of you are out there, are in recovery and have a dual diagnosis, maybe bipolar disorder, that this anger comes with rage. And there's medication you could take for that. There's mood stabilizers. If you talk to a psychiatrist, they could actually prescribe you medication. However, it's been my experience, even after you're on that medication of mood stabilizer, which means it manages your emotions. Think of it this way. When you're bipolar, your regular emotion state is this way. This is normal stage for most people. When you're bipolar, it's either ups or downs. It goes in extremes. And when you're on medication, it's like this, up and down, okay? And that's what we're looking at. For these emotions, you still need to learn the basic anger management skills to manage whatever your medication is not able to do. Because there's residual symptoms left over medication. Medication cannot actually manage all your symptomology, all your symptoms, specifically all your anger. So you need to learn the skills to add on to whatever medication you're using. So if you're not aware of this, it's going to be a really hard time in recovery. Your family's going to have a hard time with you. Also, family members, sometimes you could be frustrated, angry at your loved one, and you might act in a way that pushes them towards relapse instead of encouraging them towards recovery. So what am I saying here? This is what I'm saying. It's important, first, to know what triggers your anger. The second thing is important to learn how your anger manifests physically, biologically, mentally with you, and learn how the intensity of your emotions are going to tend. The reason is, think about it. Say I'm coming home from work. I'm heading to my house. And all of a sudden my wife says, Edgar, you didn't take out the trash. And I get super angry. And it causes a fight. I tell her something that I really regret. She tells me something. We don't speak until the end of the night. That could have been all avoided if I had awareness of my anger. And the reason I say awareness of my anger is, you have to be aware, especially in recovery, the scale of 1 to 10 where you're at. For example, say I'm coming home, that exact same scenario, my anger is at a 7. I know it's a 7. I'm pretty angry. I'm pissed off. I have to do something from my time driving home from work to reduce my anger to a 3. I could do breathing exercise. There's many things I could employ to bring out my anger. I could do a gratitude list. I could do many things, things called my blessings, whatever it might be, to bring down my anger. Because if I walk in and my wife says, you didn't take out the trash, my anger, frustration is at a 3. If she tells me something, it's going to jump to a 5. And I'm going to have the energy to be able to take out the trash, not control myself more effectively, versus the first scenario where my anger was at a 7. I didn't manage my anger effectively. I didn't do it to reduce it. So when I come home, she'll tell me something and I'm going to explode. It's going to be a big fight. And then my mind is going to justify, well, my wife said X, Y, and Z, so she deserved that. My family member said X, Y, and Z, so I deserve that. So what's really important to understand is taking full responsibility of your anger. And one of the things that Dr. Goldman talks about emotional intelligence is, if you look up the board, is that your attitude is a primary measure of emotional intelligence. If you have gratitude, it's really important. If you have optimism, and when I mean optimism, it doesn't mean that you're positive. Optimism means that no matter what life is going to bring you, somehow you figure out a way to resolve it. Somehow you overcome it. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but you know in yourself that whatever life brings you, you're going to be okay. You're going to be able to overcome that. As you look at the board, it also talks about how adaptable you are to life changes. Also is this self-awareness that we're talking about, is how you become aware of yourself. So these are the important components when it comes to emotional intelligence. And so as we're talking a little bit more, someone that's emotionally intelligent can take charge of your emotions. You can take charge of his or her emotions. That means I'm not blaming you for how I feel. I'm taking full responsibility that whatever happened, this is something going inside of me. So it's my responsibility to manage these emotions, to understand these emotions, to understand what is between anger and aggression. And I get that a lot. People say, why did you hit that person? Why did you do this? Oh, because I was angry. No, there's a difference. Anger, like before, it's an emotional, it's just a simple emotion. That's all it is. It's a physiological reaction that you have. Now, aggression is different than anger. Aggression is when you intend to cause harm or injury to some other person. That's being aggression. So you could be angry and not have hit anyone or done anything or said anything to hurt anyone, because they're two different things. But a lot of people don't realize that what fuels their anger is what we call hostility. So when it comes to hostility, it's a little bit different. It's a set of attitude. It's a set of thoughts closer together, normally typically a negative set of thoughts about a certain individual, certain situation, certain groups of people that we evaluate negatively. So that could already fuel your anger. Say you have a negative outlook towards a particular family member. They're at a party. You see them. All of a sudden, you get this frustration, right? And so that we understand what is hostility. That could be a trigger for you. Your aggression could be, remember again, is acting out aggressively and tend to cause harm. And it has nothing to do with an anger. Anger is just simply an emotion that you feel. It could range from frustration, irritation, to rage. It doesn't require any action whatsoever. And a lot of individuals confuse aggression with anger. We say, why, ask a little kid, well, why'd you hit? Oh, because I was angry. No, it's our responsibility to teach individuals that you have to learn to take charge of your emotions, manage your emotions, take full responsibility of your emotions. And emotions are feelings. Feelings, we're working on synonymously. They're both one or the other. As you look up in the TV, it talks about emotions flow naturally, unless you sustain them through your thoughts. So what's going on is your anger is just going to keep passing by. Anger is keep passing by. Anxiety, whatever emotion you're feeling. However, is what keeps the emotion there is our thoughts. The way we rehearse in our mind, the way we think about it, what happened, we rehearse the event, I should have done this, should have done that. Whatever be in your head is going to continue this emotion to stay there. So in order to let it go, we have to change what we're thinking or learn to manage those thoughts or have certain techniques I'm going to teach you today what to do. So managing how you think or talk about your feelings can either extend or reduce the intensity of your emotions. Some individuals say, Edgar, I know what I'm talking about. And some people understand that they're using very aggressive conversations. They say bad words, they curse in their brain, they have images of hurting other person, which is understandable if you're that angry. But understand, the longer you sustain these thoughts in your head, the longer that emotion is going to stay with you. The more vivid the image is, the more anger is going to be inside of you. And sometimes Edgar say, well, I just can't get rid of this image. I can't get rid of these thoughts. They just are consuming me. I understand that there's some individuals have a difficult time versus others that are a little bit easier to do, depending on the severity of what happened to you. Maybe the degree of your victimization, degree of your trauma, degree of your substance use, degree of your brain chemistry. All this could play a factor in how angry you're going to be. But it's really important to understand that what we know that creates or makes anger stay a little bit longer is recycling those thoughts of vengeance, those thoughts of hurting, those thoughts of I was wrong. These images, all those things in our brain are going to sustain and keep this anger. So if you want to get rid of your anger, you have to learn how to switch that off. And sometimes it's easier said than done. It's very difficult to try to change your thoughts when you get really angry because somehow we want to actually resolve what's going on. And sometimes the brain is not okay with what happened, with the wrongs that we had in life. And this is where the Serenity Prayer will come in. This is where the gratitude comes in. This is where journaling comes in, is get out of our head. I know a few episodes, I think last episode, we actually talked about distraction techniques. This is something you definitely do in this situation and get yourself out of your head. Even if it comes back, keep doing it again. Do not give up. Eventually, those thoughts will go away. And if you look at the TV and you look at your emotional brain, you will see that there is the limbic brain. This is your emotional brain, and the cortical brain is your frontal part of cortical brain or your frontal cortex that actually talks to you and makes you have rational decisions, logic, think about consequences. And then we have the brainstem, which is the bottom part of the brain that controls breathing, more of the reptilian brain, we call that, which is survival brain per se. And then we have the limbic system, which is the thalamus, amygdala. That's part of the brain, and that's what we call the emotional brain. That's the part of the brain that controls what you do. And sometimes this brain, or the limbic system brain, gets hijacked. And the function of the limbic system, if you look up on the TV, you're going to see the guiding principles or what the limbic system does. The limbic system labels events as internal importance for survival. It also scores highly charged emotional memory. So that means those memories of fear, those memories of someone you love and care for are going to be stored there. So they're very strong emotionally. It sets the emotional tone for the mind and mood. That means it sets your mood. How are you going to feel throughout most of the day? And then it promotes bonding. Studies have shown, especially one at UCLA, that women have a little bit bigger of a limbic system. So they're going to have easier time. So when they get really angry, they're going to want to go promote some type, talking with each other, bonding with each other, versus us. Man, our limbic system it's a little bit smaller. It also filters external events through internal events. So it adds meaning to what's going on in our life. It controls our appetite. It controls our sleep cycles. It modulates libido motivation. That means it controls your motivation. It controls your sexual appetite. It's also concerned with survival, physical maintenance, hoarding, dominance, breeding, and mating. And also has basic ruling emotions: love, hate, fear, lust, and contentment. These are some of the basic emotions that are controlled by this. And now it's also combined with the reptilian brain also serves some of these functions, but understand the limbic system is actually part of the midbrain of your body, of your brain, and we know that the drugs, this is actually where it affects you. Drugs, they did a few studies where they found that when they introduce cocaine into this part of the region of the brain, it actually makes a strong emotional connection, and this is a part of the brain that naturally, even without the drugs, will control these areas of your life. So we know that when you use drugs, this limbic system is actually going to be affected. It's going to be damaged per se. So it's natural to think that you're going to have difficulty managing your emotions in recovery, especially early in recovery, especially the first 6 months, especially the first year of your recovery. You have difficulty managing your emotions, and that's okay. Today's videotaping today, or today's show, it's not about telling you you need to manage your anger. It's to understand how to manage your anger more effectively. That's what we're trying to communicate today. Not to stop being angry, not that anger is bad, but simply understand that you're going to have difficulty managing your emotions in recovery. However, this does not mean that you stop trying to control your emotions. It simply means that I have to work harder than another person that is not in recovery. That's all that means. And you need to work extra harder to learn more of your triggers. And that's the challenging part about this. It's not fair. Why is it that I'm having a difficult time managing my emotions? That's what happens with drug usage. Understand that, family members, that because your one loved one has these emotional outbursts as anger does not mean that they're doing bad in recovery, that they're failing in recovery. No, it simply means that their brain has been affected, especially the part of the brain that manages these emotions. Just understand that. And I'm not saying that's an excuse for anyone. What I'm saying is that it's really easy just to look at the behavior and the emotional reaction versus to have empathy and compassion that person in recovery is really struggling to manage their emotions. It's not like they say, I want to have these anger outbursts. I have not met a person in recovery that says, I want to have these anger outbursts. I want to be angry at people that love and care for me. No, that's farther from the truth. Most individuals that I meet want to learn to regulate their emotions, control their emotions, and not be driven by their emotions. So one thing to understand is the limbic system plays a huge part in this. Now, as I've talked about before, is becoming aware. And some people say, well, what's self-awareness? And I notice a lot of individuals think they understand what self-awareness is, but in reality is they're criticizing themselves. And that's not what self-awareness are. If you look at the TV screen, it actually mentions that self-awareness is not being self-conscious. That's not self-awareness is. Self-awareness is not being analytical. Self-awareness is not blaming or being self-critical. This is not being self-aware of what's going on with you. That's farther from anything. If anything, you're putting yourself down, and anything, your lack of awareness. What self-awareness actually means is observing your thoughts and feelings. Just observing. Noticing like you're in a video or you're in the movie theaters and you're watching the movie and observing your thoughts and feelings without reaction. You're just becoming aware of what's going on without judging yourself, good or bad, right or wrong. You're just having that image. That's all of becoming self-awareness. It's like mindfulness, where you're just observing that thought, go without reacting, remaining equanimous. Equanimous means without reaction, just noticing it passes by. That's self-awareness. When you're feeling something, you don't say, oh, I don't like the way I'm feeling, or you say, okay, I'm feeling anger. Okay, let me understand this anger. Where is this anger coming from? Instead of saying, I don't like it, learn to embrace it. Learn to be one with it. Instead of acting it, feel it, understand it, Because anger is a warning sign, or anger is actually trying to tell you something. There's an unmet need when it comes to anger. It's trying to tell you something's going on that I need to take care of, something within my own self. So understand that. Self-awareness is witnessing yourself from a neutral perspective, not reacting. Just being there with your thoughts. To say, Edgar, well, that's easier to say. I have all these 1,000 thoughts coming by. Observe the 1,000 thoughts. Notice as they come by. Don't fight them. Just be there with them. Another thing of self-awareness is being aware that are you just noticing your sensations, emotions, and experience. I actually been to what we call Vipassana meditation. And I've done these 10 days meditation retreats where it kind of teaches us how just to observe, remain equanimous. We did 10 days without cell phones, without TV, no talking, no eye contact. We got rid of all that. And all we do is meditate. We do this for 3-4 hours at a time throughout the whole day. And let me tell you, that's a great way to become more aware of what you're thinking without judging yourself, good or bad, just noticing, experience your sensations. What I mean sensations is whatever your body's feeling, any aches, any pains, any trembling, any shaking, whatever it might be, any itching, you just notice sensations. What's going on with you? Not good or bad, right or wrong, you're just noticing the sensations. And this is what self-awareness is. So, and self-awareness doesn't require any action by your part. It just requires you just to notice, to be there. And that's very difficult sometimes when we get angry because we don't like this feeling of anger. So I do want to share with you that anger is an unpleasant feeling, but sometimes there's a pay value to anger. You have to understand, what do you mean pay value? What do you get at getting angry? I ask a lot of people a lot of these questions. What do you get out of getting angry? What is it for you when you get angry? What's the benefit of getting angry? And most of the time they say, nothing. Anger has brought me nothing but negative things, has brought me a relationship breakup, has brought me going to jail, whatever it might be. And I tell them, that's not true. There's a pay value. We have to recognize you get something out of getting angry. What is you get out of getting angry? You get pleasure. Some people do. You get control. Do people listen to you? Do you feel strong? Do you feel that you've kind of released all the tension? That's what we call the immediate payoff. Things you get all of a sudden and right away. But the thing we have to understand is those immediate ones also have long-term consequences. What are the long-term consequences? I know I don't like being around people that get angry a lot. You lose friends when you get angry. Some people might develop some maybe medical problems. Who knows? Some people might ruin their relationships. People might end up alone being angry. So one thing to understand is those are the long-term consequences when it comes to anger. And the thing is, anger could become a habit. It could become an emotional response, a habitual response, something you do without really thinking, just automatic. And that's what happens some of the time. Sometimes people get angry and they want to scream and shout. But studies have shown that when you're angry, the more screaming, the more shouting you do, the better you are actually being angry and screaming and shouting when you get angry. It does the opposite. Many years ago, a lot of therapists, a lot of psychiatrists, people in the mental health profession will say, well, you get angry, go hit a pillow. But what we've recognized in the literature is that if you get angry and you hit, your brains make a connection, anger, hit, anger, hit, anger, hit. Also, you become really good at hitting when you're angry. So you want to do the opposite when it comes to getting angry. So it's really important to understand that anger is something that is going to happen naturally. And I keep saying that over and over because sometimes we have to hear that. Anger is going to happen. Don't deny your anger. And look at what your pay value is for the anger. Understand that. Also, you have to look at what are the consequences of your anger. What are they? What things brings you to life? What are the positive consequences? What are the negative consequences? This is what we call the payoff things. Has your anger become a habit? Are you addicted to anger? Is it something you do that's automatic for you, or maybe something that when you don't get what you want, you get angry, and you've learned this response without knowing that when you get angry, and that's what happens. You get rewarded. When you get angry, then people do what you want. You get angry again, it happens. So understand that anger could become a habit. But the good thing is you could break this anger. And you do this by self-management. And one of the things you do is you first have to learn how to make a commitment to yourself. And when I talk about commitment is you tell yourself, I'm going to work really hard to try to not have destructive anger and keep my anger at a constructive level, which is a 5 instead of a 6, 7, 8, or 9. If you notice, I didn't say stop trying to get rid of anger. That's not going to happen. You will never get rid of anger. Anger is a natural emotional state, and it's going to happen. So the goal is to have a healthy level of anger, a constructive anger. So you have to make it a goal for yourself. I'm going to have, or I'm going to try to have, I'm going to not even try, I'm going to develop the ability to manage my anger. I'm going to do that. You have to be willing to do this. You have to be ready to do this. And the last thing, you have to be able. When we mean ready and willing means I want to do it today. I'm going to start today. I am ready and I am willing. I'm going to put effort into it. And able means, do you have the skills to learn to manage your anger? Do you know what to do? Do you have a toolbox when it comes to anger? And that's what we're going to actually have the next part of the show is, what can you do when you get angry? We've covered so far, we'll know what your triggers are. Is it wedding lines, people calling you a liar, people talking about your family, whatever it might be? What is your physical response when it comes to anger? What is your thinking, your emotions when it comes to anger? Learn how to kind of gauge your anger from a scale of 1 to 10 and how to and bring it down. Those things what happen is anger become a habit. What is the payoff when it comes to anger? What are the motivation factors of anger for you? When do you know you act aggressively? When do you know when you're hostile? These are all things really important to know when it comes to anger management. Do you have what we call red flag issues? Those are unresolved, long-stemming things that have happened to us that we just think about it, we get angry. I'll give you an example. There's some people in my life, people that I know in my life, that if you say the word crazy, they get super angry. Don't call me crazy. It just triggers them. All of a sudden, some people we could call them dumb, and they get really angry, versus if you tell someone else you're crazy, they just laugh about it and they move on. There's certain words that will trigger long-term anger for them, whatever the experience might be. So you have to be understanding, what are your long-term red flags? What are your long-term triggers? What are things back in your life that someone says a word or says something or an action, all of a sudden it triggers your anger? Some people might be lying. Some people might be telling them you're a liar, and all of a sudden they get really explosive, really angry. So you understand, you also really important to understand for your loved one in recovery, what are their long-term cues for your family members? It's really important to understand that some of your family members know what your red flag is, and sometimes they'll push those buttons purposely or sometimes unconsciously. Sometimes you have certain hostility towards a certain family member, and they might say something that's a long-term red flag, and boom, it sets you in a very rage, super angry. So it's extremely important to understand all these concepts when it comes to anger management. If you look up on the TV, it's going to show you what self-management actually means. It means inspiring your own motivation. You know what motivates you not to be angry. Not blaming others for personal difficulties. Taking full responsibility. That's what self-management means. Using your understanding of emotions to choose which emotion to express and how to express them is really important. Another thing that I have not mentioned is actually a very simple concept, but very difficult to kind of identify. Besides this anger, what other emotions am I feeling? Because sometimes when I get angry, I might feel helpless. I might feel hopeless. So now I'm going to feel anxious. So I could have four of these emotions all wrapped into one. So when it comes to self-management, you understand how many of the emotions you're feeling. How intense are you feeling all these emotions? Because it's really important for you to learn to identify every single one of these emotions, not just one or the other. However, you could choose to manage the one that you think is causing you the most problems. Yeah, you're going to learn to manage anger, but eventually you're going to have to learn to manage this feeling of helplessness, this emotion of hopelessness, this excessive guilt, this shame, jealousy, whatever it might be that's fueling this anger. Because yes, you can manage this anger, but if you don't take away the fuel, which are some of these emotions, will cause you more problems. And as I've been talking before, I look at the board, emotional intelligence or emotional management requires you to take 100% responsibility of the outcome of all your relationships, the outcome of the way your emotions affect you. Now, I'm just going to share with you a few basic concepts of how to manage your emotions. The first thing I really encourage everyone to do is focusing on changing yourself and not the other person. It's like a story where this patient went to this doctor and asked the doctor, doctor, my wife is giving me a headache. My mother-in-law is causing me a lot of anger. My children are causing me a lot of anxiety. And the doctor says, okay, we're going to give you 3 pills. And the client goes, what for? He's a pill to give to your mother-in-law, pill to your wife, and some pills for your kids. That's not the way it works. What we really have to look at is that you have to focus on changing yourself, not other persons. And really easy to fall into the trap of, this person is making me mad. This person, no. In reality, no. You are reacting in this manner. I'm not saying that it's all in your head. I'm not saying that people don't do things that will frustrate anyone. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that it's your responsibility to changing your reaction when people act a certain way. You have to disengage from negative relationships. Important. You have to understand, what are your triggers. That's the first step you have to do, is identify all your triggers and see which triggers you could actually avoid and you don't really have to be around. That's the first thing. What are your triggers? And those things you can't avoid, I'm going to teach you what you need to do to manage these triggers. But there's some things that are causing you so much anger that we sometimes, without knowing, we're putting ourselves in that situation where the simple solution is, get out of it. Don't hang out with that certain person if you don't need to hang out with that person. But the person is very negative and is very antagonistic, why be around that person? I'm not saying run away from them. I'm saying, if there's no need for you to be with that person in your life or be part of your life, don't be around them. Avoid them. Or let them know, you know what, when we're around together, I don't like the way I feel. Until I learn how to manage myself more effectively, we could hang out again. But to ask them to change is unrealistic. You could do it, but understand they have a choice if they want to change or not. And you have a choice to stay in that relationship or not stay in that relationship, be part of that relationship or not be part of that relationship. Or what you could do is use better communication, conflict resolution with a particular person. However, if you notice you're changing your conflict resolution or the way you communicate with them and they're still being antagonistic, being negative, then you have to make a choice. Do I stay in this relationship or do I leave it? It's up to you. I would say make the decision of leaving if the person doesn't want to change. And when the person changes, invite them to your life. Or when you improve your skills and manage it more effectively, then go back into their life. So that's one thing to look at is first becoming aware of what triggers you and avoid those situations. The second thing you need to do when it comes to managing your anger effectively in recovery is this concept of understanding that emotion is just going to happen. So what do I do is gratitude. When you're angry at other people for something they've done wrong you, write a list of what good qualities they have. Because what happens when you get really angry, you only see one side of their character, which consumes their whole character. So what I'm going to ask you to do is when you get angry at your loved one, when you're angry at your spouse, at your sponsor, make a list, an exhaustive list of all the good qualities this person has. Because one thing my mentor taught me is that everyone has good qualities. No matter who you are, you have great qualities. Is we sometimes have to look really hard to find those qualities when we get really angry. So write a list. What the quality? They're caring, they're loving. Write down times they've helped you in your life. They're supporting your life. That's going to help you bring down the anger. Whenever you're angry at yourself, write a list of good qualities, things you've done for yourself, things you're proud of yourself, characteristics, abilities that you admire by yourself, and write them down. This is going to change that negative thinking to more of a helpful, positive thinking. And it's going to be is I don't want you to, it's not about being positive. Is what you're doing is you're balancing out your thinking pattern where yes, you're acknowledging the negative, but you're also acknowledging the positive the person has, and that's going to balance out your anger. That's one thing you could do. Another thing you could do is when you're angry at someone else is take a look at their history. What struggles have they gone through? What have they suffered in life? Because that's going to give you understanding of compassion and empathy, that they are suffering. Happy people don't get angry. Happy people are happy people. Angry people that are all the time, they have experienced some traumas, some setbacks. whatever that might be, try to understand their background. It doesn't make it okay or excuse their anger. What it does is teaches you this person is a human being that has suffered. If I've gone through what they've gone through in their life, or have done what they've done, or maybe the things that have happened to them would happen to me, I'll probably be the same way. That's another way to develop compassion and empathy, is understand that given their history, it's understandable to look at the way their reaction. Same thing with yourself. And it's not about getting an excuse. This is about simply acknowledging what has happened to you and understanding the reason you're reacting the way you're reacting. That's another thing you could definitely do when it comes to anger, is taking that inventory. Another thing you could do when you get really angry, say they don't work, is taking your time out. And when I mean time out, doesn't mean you just walk away. Time out has to be used effectively. When you're taking a time out with your partner or anyone else, it's not like you say, okay, I need a time out. Before you get angry, you establish rules of engagement, which means you have cue words that are going to trigger that tells your partner, I need to take a time out. You could say, I need a time out. I need some time off. You go for 20 minutes, and in 20 minutes, you just don't walk away or walk out and just do nothing. You walk out and you do this gratitude list. You journal for 20 minutes nonstop. Whatever it might be, you might go for a walk or whatever it might be to help you process what's going on. Think about something else to bring down the anger. For men, it's going to take a little bit longer than more than 20 minutes. So I recommend like maybe 25 minutes and have this rule that when you come back, you'll talk about it. And if you can't, you have to table it for some other time. That's what effective timeout means. It doesn't mean timeout means I'm just going to walk away and not come back. Timeout means that it's a prearranged plan with your partner that after 25 minutes, you're going to come back and talk about this. And during those 25 minutes, you're going to do something to reduce the anger. Some people actually listen to meditation music, some people listen to calming music. Whatever it might be during just 20 minutes, some people play with their kids. Some people are active in doing something listen to music that is going to calm them down, whatever it might be, to come down and engage. Some people come back and make a list of, okay, what was my part in this anger escalation? What can I do? What is it I want from this anger? Or what is it I want from this situation? And they come back with a little plan already. This is what I really want to get across, and this is what I want, and this is what I'm willing to do. So you come back with the plan. So it's not just taking 20 minutes time out and then coming back and expecting that everything's okay. That's why sometimes these timeouts don't work, because people just walk away for 20 minutes and then all of a sudden expect that magically, just because they were gone for 20 minutes, things are going to get better. Sometimes it does happen like that, but that's really rare when it happens, because I've noticed when you don't have a plan, you walk out for 20 minutes, we recycle that thought over, we recycle the particular conversation, what was said, what wasn't said, what could have said, all these different things, and it just, after 10, 15 minutes, we're still as angry as we were, and as we're calming down, we're still angry, we're still frustrated. So we want to do something actively when it comes to doing a timeout. So not just walking away. It's really important. You also have to look at what things can you do physically to get you, go for a run, go for a walk, do some exercise, whatever it might be during those 20 minutes. So that's really important to kind of consider, is what active things can you do to bring down your anger. So that's something you do during the anger episode. Another thing that you could do is, as you're managing this anger, is for you to write down. Do little circles, because there's something very common about just doing circles back and forth that is going to be really common for you. And that's something you could definitely do. Or some people, what they do is they just go in their room, watch some comedy, watch something that's funny, whatever it might be, to bring down this anger. And understand this anger, understand where it's coming from. And as your anger is coming down, before you meet with someone, or when your anger is coming, you ask yourself, what is a deeper meaning here in this anger? Talk to your anger. And now it sounds kind of ridiculous or kind of corny. Say, talk to your anger. Ask your anger, what are you really trying to tell me? What is my specific need here? What is my anger trying to get me to understand? What is it trying to communicate? Is there any other emotions that are just happening? A lot of times anger has to do with a lot of rules that we have, the should statements, the must, need to, these very rules that are very rigid, that are not flexible, like she should not talk to me this way, she should be this way. So whenever we violate the rule, we get angry. So sometimes anger, we have to get rid of the should statements, of the shoulding, and say, acceptance. Sometimes you could do the serenity prayer, which talks about acceptance. That's really helpful to do. So these are just basic things you could do when it comes to anger management and managing your emotions when it comes to recovery base. And And the thing that's really difficult sometimes to understand is that this anger, whether you believe it or not, it's going to pass. If anything, when you're angry, do not walk out without a plan. Because sometimes you might find yourself walking into your connect's home, finding in your own neighborhood, walking in to someone that has used before, is currently using, and there you go, you've relapsed. So one of the things I recommend, do not leave your house or where you're at unless you have a specific plan to do so. What I really recommend in your recovery, go to different rooms. If you're in recovery, do not walk out that house, especially if it's at night, 10 o'clock at night, and go for a walk. What's going to happen at night? You might get pulled over, cravings might happen, whatever it might be, because we know when we get angry, we'll tend to have cravings. We'll get what we call the screw it attitude, where we don't really care anymore. We get so angry that we say, screw this. And sometimes many people have sabotaged a recovery in a very angry episode. So I'm not saying family members be scared of your loved one being angry. What I'm saying is, it's really important to understand that anger could jeopardize my recovery. So I need to learn to respect my anger, not be scared of it, not run away from it, but learn to feel it, learn to understand it. What is it trying to tell me? What to do before the anger episode, what to do during the anger episode, and what to do after the anger episode. If you notice you're being angry for hours at a time, you're angry most of the day, and you're in recovery, it might be biological. It might be many things. It might be that your body's withdrawing. It might be many things to this. But also remember that if you suffer from anger, and this is just an education component to this, what to do to manage anger, it's important to get specific anger management courses if you need that. Talk to your counselor if you're feeling anger. If you're a family member and you notice yourself getting angry at your loved one, explore that with a counselor. Get your own counselor to kind of help you resolve, help you understand why you're so angry at your loved one. If you're in recovery and you're angry and you don't really understand why, seek some counseling. You don't have to do long-term counseling, 2 or 3 sessions. So, sometimes just working the steps, working through the 4-step, taking more inventory and correcting our wrongs, or admitting our wrongs and asking for amends resolves a lot of our anger. Your anger might be a result of guilt, of shame, of abuse, whatever it might be. And it's important to address it in recovery, not ignore it. I've given you today what is anger, how to manage it, but it's important to understand that's just basic. That's just at the surface level. If you find yourself really, really angry, if you find yourself that you've had some trauma, seek counseling, because sometimes the trauma could manifest itself in anger episodes. Sometimes untreated other mental health conditions manifest themselves in anger. Sometimes untreated depression can manifest as anger. So just understand that just because today you've covered what anger management looks like, what it is, it does not mean that you might not need special help. What I'm letting you know is that you were given to the basic understanding of what is anger, how to manage it in your life, what value does it have in your life, what to do, what sustains it. So this does not take the place of you going to counseling and actually helping yourself from resolving this anger. Sometimes it might be short-term, some might be long-term. I know at Crossroads Recovery Centers, we do anger management as a core component of our treatment, because we understand there might be a lot of anger and there's a lot of causes of anger. There's just not one singular cause of anger. There could be many things that are causing this anger to reappear in our life. And sometimes you might be okay in your initial recovery. And all of a sudden, when you hit the wall, 45, 65 days after, you might get really angry. Sometimes you get angry after a year, whatever it might be. Just understand that. That's a very natural occurring process, and you could actually learn to figure it out. You've learned to address it and heal from anger, because healing from anger is possible. It is possible to let go of the rage, let go of the constant anger you might feel. And at Crossroads Recovery Centers, we do recognize that. At any treatment center, reputable treatment center, any treatment center, they do focus on anger management. They do focus on your ability to identify other emotions besides anger and put a specific plan to manage them. I'm not saying that the only problem is anger. What I'm saying is, if you have an anger problem, and when I mean anger problem, that means it's causing you conflict with loved ones, it's causing you to not able to sleep, not eat, whatever anger is causing you, get some help. Recognize that it's definitely treatable. And your body's trying to tell you something, and we need to listen to our body and understand that it's time. It's time to heal. It's time to let go. It's time to be happy. It's time to just understand that you don't have to live with this emotion we call anger. You could definitely let it go. And first you have to understand it, become aware of it, manage it, and eventually get rid of it, because it is possible to get rid of the destructive anger and learn to have healthy anger. And I want to thank you very much for being part of today's show. I really appreciate giving me the time, your ear, to provide you with this valuable information on how to manage anger effectively in your recovery process, or just have to manage anger in general. And if you have any questions, you could always give us a call here at Christ TV, give you more information. If you need some counseling, please seek it either in your own state, in your own city, with a psychotherapist, or with a therapist, or with a mental health clinician, whoever it might be, maybe an anger management group, whatever it might be. There is help out there, and I ask for everyone that has an anger problem, seek the help that you need so that we could live the life you're meant to have. Thank you very much, and have a great day.